Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back to our channel. My name is Beck. I am the founder of the group coaching membership Dare Darling, where we take successful women from playing it small, from playing it safe, from underestimating themselves, from being fueled in their actions and controlled by their self-doubt and self-criticism through processes like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people-pleasing, over to feeling safe to dare and express and assert themselves, show up in the world as themselves in their integrity, in a way that has them put their head on the pillow at night and say, that was hard, but I am so proud of how I showed up. That was hard and it was worth it. We are all about helping brilliant women do the hard things in life so they can feel proud of themselves. And with all the conditioning that women have received over their lives about how it's more important for them to be normal, convenient, obedient, fit in the box, not rock the boat, be nice even, it's actually quite difficult for us to actually live from our integrity and do those things that should and could otherwise be a lot easier. So if that's important to you, if you want that to feel easier for you in your life, then Dare Darling is the place for you. And I would just love for you to join us. We have the most gorgeous, beautiful, powerful group of women here. Now, right along those lines of Dare Darling, today's video is a video in our series on boundaries level 2. And I thought this would be a really impactful series to give out to you guys because, well, first of all, it is hard enough just to construct and execute on the boundary itself. There are so many barriers that are thrown up for us just to get to the point of setting a boundary. So congratulations if you're doing that work. Level 1, incredible. And also this level 2 that I'm talking about in this series can also, if not attended to, create so many blocks for you and misunderstandings and misplaced fear around setting the boundary even in the first place. And it's also about making sure there's a process for you to take care of yourself and support yourself after the fact, after you set the boundary. Because let's be honest, it's not just actually speaking the words or nailing communication that is what's difficult at its core with boundaries. But there's actually so much more cognitive and emotional load around before and after the boundary as well that we can work on to make ourselves more supported and more powerful in the boundary setting and just more willing to set the boundary once and again and again and again, which is what we need to do in our lives to get the freedom and the empowerment that we deserve. I've just noticed the light has gone down. So 1 second, I'm gonna open my window and I'll be back with better lighting. All right, lighting level 2. Now back to boundaries level 2. Now, one of the first things I wanna bring to your attention and offer you for boundaries level 2 is making sure we're setting a boundary with a consequence that is in our control and about us. Now, one of the first things that I wanted to bring to your attention and offer you for this boundaries level 2 work is, you know from boundary basics, the follow through of a boundary violation is a consequence that is totally in your control. It's about removing yourself or doing something for yourself that creates that safety again for you, or that meets your need in that situation. The consequence is something that you will do and that's in your control. Here comes the sun again. Okay, I think we're okay. In this video, I wanted to focus specifically on making sure this consequence is not only in your control, but completely about you, all right? Totally for you. Now, this is a boundaries level 2 topic because while it might seem easy in theory to be clear about setting a boundary consequence that is in your control, setting a boundary consequence that is all about you, focused on you, for you, key, for you, can be more difficult. And especially for people like us who have spent most of our lives learning to and actively trying to focus more on other people's experience rather than our own. So even the concept of doing something for you in this setting of boundaries can be more clunky and not come as easily for us. And I'll tell you humbly, in my recent experience setting boundaries, I found that what came automatically for me was not necessarily the question of what do I need right now? What do I need, and therefore what should the consequence be if this boundary is violated? But what came more naturally were questions like, what should I do right now? What's the right thing to do right now? And it kind of sends me along this line of thinking, well, what is the fair thing to do in this situation between me and another person? What is the reasonable thing to do? And thinking about the function of what I do in terms of sending a message, right? Sending a message that is something like, this is a standard that I don't accept. This is below the standard with which I am willing to operate in, or even trickling way over the line into a message that is more overtly about the other person. Something like, you should not be showing up like this, right? And I have no problem with people wanting to communicate that in any of their professional or personal lives. I have no qualms with that, but I want it to be very clear that that is not the way that I recommend you use boundaries. That's just a separate process that we can do in another situation. Communicate well, or communicate as experiments to see if we ask somebody to change, then how do they respond to that? Will they change? What works to create change? How do we influence other people? That is a different process that I also love, but it is a different process from boundaries. And if you're using one tool or the other tool, if you have one goal or another goal, I want you to be very clear about that, because it's only disempowering when you get confused about what you're trying to do and you're using the wrong tool in the wrong place. So let me talk more about that. When we make the consequence of a boundary about another person, when we make our consequence something like, well, I'm going to stop engaging in this or doing this, or I'm going to remove my presence, in order to change the way they think, change the way they feel, change the way they behave. Now, our consequence is trying to control them. And there is nothing more disempowering than trying to control something that you can't, which includes another person, another person's thoughts, another person's emotions, how another person feels, or another person's behavior. So I just want to offer you, if you're trying to misuse your boundary consequence as a way to change somebody else's behavior or how they're feeling or thinking, or to send a message, to do that, to make that change in them. If you're using it to send a message, we are focusing on the wrong thing here. Here's another really important thing I want you to see in this situation. If you've got somebody who's violating your boundaries, right? And you're in the position now where you have, let's say this is a boundary that you have actively communicated and this person's aware of it. So you've had somebody, this person who's aware of your boundary, violate your boundary. So now you're in the position to execute on this consequence. By definition, you've now got a person who didn't care to, or wasn't able to, be aware of the boundary that you'd set, the request that you'd made, what you wanted, what you cared about, shown by the boundary violation in the first place. And guys, this doesn't need to be this strict. I am all for second chances and optimizing communication and things like that. But let's just think about this situation where somebody has shown you this about them, by virtue of you being in the position where now you are executing on the boundary violation consequence. So your plan is now to do something that communicates this message to them or affects them in some way, when they have just shown you that they're not interested in changing themselves or even receiving a message about what you want and what's important to you, right? So I just want to compassionately, and also from my personal experience, have us have a look at that situation and what we're trying to do. I love that you are deciding that this standard is too low for you, and that you're seeing that you want other people to behave differently around you or for you or with you. I love that for you. And also, I want you to be very aware of the limitations of your power there. And instead of trying to continue to control somebody, how they think, feel, and act, somebody specifically who doesn't want to take you into consideration, I want you to be able to question if that is really the way that you want to use your energy here. Is that really strategically what you want to spend your attention and energy on? When I caught myself doing that, when I was withdrawing my energy, my presence, my contribution in certain places after my boundary had been violated, I thought that, when I kind of made this decision, I was like, yeah, I'll do that for me. I'm going to stop investing in those places if that boundary is violated. That seems like a good thing for me. But I did notice that in the moment when I was emotionally heightened, I was thinking, yeah, this is the message that I want to send. I need them to know that this is the standard I accept. And suddenly, in that moment, I got awareness that I was making it about them. And that is not how you use boundaries. That made me feel more powerless. I set the boundary to be able to take care of myself and have more choice and control in my life. Not to only end up being more powerless, trying to control something that I can't. When my only opportunity to influence somebody else's behavior in this situation was actually to have them care about what I wanted and what I said was important to me. And they'd already demonstrated, not just once, and not just with one communication attempt, but over and over and over again, they demonstrated that they weren't going to adjust what they were doing, how they were showing up, how they were thinking for me. And that's their choice. They own their choices, and we now need to own our choices and make sure they like them. And I did not like that I was putting myself in this powerless position. So when I got awareness of that, I had to really spend some time thinking, if this was never even going to touch them in any way, if this was just, if I settled on the concept that they would not be affected, they would not even notice how my behavior changed, what do I want to do in this situation for myself after this boundary violation? What do I want? What do I need in this moment? And funnily enough, my actions were actually very similar. How I actually behave in that situation was very similar to when I asked the question of what message do I want to send to them? How do I want them to change? How am I going to get them to change? My actions were very similar in both of those cognitive programs, where I was trying to control them versus where I was trying to think about what was for me. But the emotion and the thought process that they came from were totally different. And that totally changed my experience. That totally changed how I showed up. That totally changed what I was able to do after I'd executed on that consequence. It was suddenly all about me. It was suddenly all about me taking care of me. And I had so much more mind space. I had so much more strategically focused attention. I had so much more freedom and flexibility of thought when I focused on what I needed in that moment. That was honestly hard for me. It was hard for me to receive that boundary violation after so many times. It was hurtful. And there were so many things that I wanted in that moment for myself. And when I actually focused on myself, I could also give those things to myself. So as subtle as this might be, this can be a total game changer for you. And I was actually working with one of my clients on this very challenge as well, and it was a game changer for her too. So look into this for yourself and notice if you're finding you're getting some of these boundary concepts confused. And if you get awareness, excellent. Remember, I got stuck too. Awareness is excellent. Even awareness if you're doing the wrong thing or not the ideal thing that you'd like to be doing. That awareness is the first win. You can't change something if you're not aware of it. So awareness, yay. And then I want you to just turn it back around to you. What do I want to do? What is for me in terms of this consequence? Forget them. It's all about you. I know that's hard for people like you. One more thing I'll say is this can be a Venn diagram, right? So the things that are purely for you can also simultaneously send a message, right? So there's some things that are for you that also send that message or do influence other people's behavior. But I just want you to make sure you're picking something from the Venn diagram that at least falls into your circle, right? That primarily falls into your circle, and then it's just a side effect if it happens to affect the other person in the way that you would ideally like it to. But never try to control something that you can't. There is nothing that will make you feel more out of control. All right, my beautiful friends, I hope this one was so helpful for you. Boundaries are so powerful as long as we're not using them in a way that is disempowering, but it's a very easy trap to fall into. So just watch your mind, always be watching yourself, always be trying to increase your self-awareness. And that is exactly the work that we do in Dear Darling. So if you know that this is the kind of work that you need in your life, then find the links below. We've got your back, we've got you covered. We've got the most beautiful group, and I'm telling you, you want to be a part of it. These women are upgrading their lives. All right, my beautiful friends, I will see you in my next one.